This feature has influenced our foreign policy and international relations. During the Najib administration, for example, um, we, 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 we project this view. We project this view as a moderate Muslim country to the initiative of the global movement of the moderates. And our social identity has influenced our approach to issues related to human rights, gender equality, and the rights of marginalized groups. Although the WWF keeps criticizing the way we treat marginalized groups, especially when, for example, in Sabah, our treatment of the undocumented community in Sabah. But in general, this is how we project ourselves. We are a Commonwealth country, for example, the English language that we use in public sector, for example, we must use the UK version of English, not the United States English. Malaysian use the UK English. That's why my slide is in UK English. Let me move on to the defense relations of Malaysia. By the way, Dr. Nichan, if I am moving too fast, please inform me. If if anybody is having trouble keeping up, I can slow down. Maybe I'm getting nervous more and more. That's why.
No, that's fine. You're doing very good, very well. We are catching up very stably.
All right. If that's so, let me continue. Our defense relations with other countries have been shaped by our historical experiences. I would say our geographical location. We are strategically located in the heart of Southeast Asia. We control the waterways, the Straits of Malacca, which is the maritime route for international trade between East and West. So this also shapes our strategic interests. And as a sovereign nation with a history of colonization, Malaysia emphasizes a lot on independence and neutrality in its defense relations with other countries. That's why in Professor Kwik Cheng Chui's work, he argued that the way Malaysia balances itself between the US and China, we are using the strategy of equidistance to look as neutral as possible, not siding with either of the two greatest military power in the world right now, because we want to safeguard our interest. Malaysia is a member of several regional and international security organizations, including ASEAN, which is the cornerstone of our foreign policy, ASEAN Regional Forum. And when it comes to defense relations, this is, I would say, Malaysia's main instrument in our defense relations. We are part of the 5 power defense arrangements. Consist of the United Kingdom, Malaysia, Australia, Singapore, and New Zealand. This is the key security partnership for Malaysia, and it serves as a framework for military cooperation and training. Although we also have defense relations with the United States. For example, if I'm not mistaken, up until last year, I think, almost every year, the US will have a naval visit to one of our naval base in Kota Kinabalu, in Sepanggar, whereby they are going to allow civilians to visit the ships. And also we have defense relations with China getting better, getting stronger. if we read the works of Dr. Neo Chubin from University Malaya, he did a comprehensive analysis of Malaysia-China defense relations, and it has informed my research very meaningfully. But the cornerstone of our defense relation is this, the FPDA. This is what I have been mentioning. In addition to alliances and partnerships, Malaysia also engages in military cooperation with other countries through joint exercises, military exchanges. For example, Malaysia, every now and then, I think we are sending our military officers to study in US military colleges, and we buy some of our military equipment from a number of countries. When it comes to aircraft equipment, it is interesting that we are boasting jet fighters from both the United States and Russian jet fighters. We have the US aircraft, and we also have the Russian built Su-30 MKM jet fighter. So that's interesting. And Malaysia's defense relations are also shaped by regional and global security interests, including counterterrorism, maritime security, piracy in the Malacca Strait, Strait of Malacca, and then peacekeeping operations. Not only that, recently, during the earthquake, the recent earthquake situation in Turkey, we also send our military personnel to help with the search and rescue operation. Malaysia has participated in peacekeeping missions under the United Nations, and then has contributed to regional security initiatives such as the Malacca Strait patrols, the ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting. We have also been participating in the Shangri-La Dialogue. I think it is held, is it annually or biannually, the Shangri-La Dialogue? I have to check in Singapore, the Shangri-La Dialogue. We have been actively participating in that. So this comes to my effort to present the argument how state identity influence defense relations. Because this is what I have been trying to prove. This is the thesis, actually. This is what I am trying to prove. I'm trying to prove that state identity is indeed influential in determining the level, the depth, or the strength of defense relations as manifested by the different ranks of defense attaches that we send to different countries. The most prominent example is Malaysia's emphasis on sovereignty and independence, which has led to a preference of non-alignment and neutrality. We do not want to be seen as too much aligned to either of the two current major military powers, because we also have to take into account how our counterparts view our position. For example, if we get too close to Russia, how is the US going to respond to our defense posture? This is what we have to take into consideration. If we are getting too close to the Chinese, for example, we are worried about how the US is going to react to whatever defense initiatives that we are trying to take. And that's why Malaysia's non-alignment policy is reflected in our approach to security partnerships. We seek to maintain a balance between engagement with major powers, and at the same time, while we are balancing our distance with the major powers, we are trying hard, we are trying our best that our interests, we are still able to pursue our interest, especially economic interest. Because right now, after the pandemic, for example, I think not only Malaysia, but all countries in Southeast Asia are trying to recover from the effect of the pandemic. Right now, we are trying to attract foreign investment. So that also plays into account in determining how do we strategize our approach when it comes to major powers. This is what I have been talking about. We have established security partnerships with both the US and China, while also engaging with regional organizations such as the ASEAN and the five power defense arrangements. The FPDA, for example, is a prime example of Malaysia's approach to security partnerships. It reflects our emphasis on regional cooperation and collective defense while maintaining our neutrality and independence. This is what we are trying to project to our counterparts. We are independent, we are non-aligned, and we are neutral. We are not trying to side with any of the major powers. And when it comes to our society, our multicultural society also played a significant factor in our defense relations. For example, we send quite a significant number of people who are studying in the Middle East and are doing the pilgrimage every year. I remember in 2011, during the Arab Spring crisis, we have a lot of our citizens who are stranded in the Middle East and they are not able to get out. And if I'm not mistaken, during that time, we have not had established stronger defense relations with the countries involved in the crisis during that time. So it has posed a challenge for Malaysia in our effort to take out our citizens out of the conflict zone. If only we had a better defense relations with the countries who are involved in the conflict at the time, the coordination between our military and their military could have been more efficient. We will not face much problems because if we have a better understanding, a stronger understanding between the militaries of the countries, probably it will be easier for us, faster for us to take out our citizen from the conflict areas. So Malaysia's participation in international peacekeeping missions, UNIFIL, international monitoring teams, is an example of our commitment towards promoting cooperation and understanding between different cultures and religion. We send our militaries to peacekeeping operations not only to the Muslim majority countries, but also other countries. Let's see. What are the aspects of Malaysia's identity? This can be seen in our emphasis to regional security and stability. For example, our geography, just like what I have mentioned, we are located in the heart of Southeast Asia, and it has made us a critical player in the region's security architecture. What we are doing to effectively patrol the waterways are very much important to the major powers. If the Strait of Malacca is not safe as a trade route, it's going to be problematic. That's why we engage with the major powers and they are committing themselves to develop our capacity to better patrol the Strait of Malacca. Because if the waterways is protected, then trade is going to be smooth and there is not going to be a high risk of trade disruption. The last point right there, Malaysia has also been active in promoting maritime security and counter-terrorism cooperation in the region. This brings me to other factors shaping our defense relations. I have talked about the political identity, economic identity, and social identity, but what other factors that are in play in shaping our defense relations? One of the most important factor is our strategic interest. And I argue that our strategic interest, because I'm going with the constructivism framework, I argue that our strategic interest originates from our identity. Our strategic interest is informed by our identity. Who we are determines or influence what we think is important, or who we think are the most important defense partners. And our strategic location makes Malaysia a key player in region security issues, just like what I have mentioned right now. And this is one of the main strategic considerations. If we do not have enough capability to better manage the waterways, Strait of Malacca, for example, then we engage other countries to develop our capability, military procurement, or the know-how, the knowledge side, the skill side. And the last point right there, Malaysia has developed close defense ties with the US and other Western countries in order to counterbalance China's growing influence in the region, especially in addressing China's assertiveness in the region. Domestic politics is another factor that influences Malaysia's defense relations. The makeup of our domestic politics, which party is in power, who is our prime minister. This all influences. For example, our current prime minister closer to US, for example, he is friend with the president of Turkey, he is friend with the president of Indonesia. This will all have an impact on our defense relations. The ruling government's ideology, how do they perceive other threat, external threat or internal threat? For example, the BN coalition government, which ruled Malaysia from 1957 to 2018, emphasized sovereignty and non-alignment. And this view has shaped our relationship with other countries. Regional dynamics, what are we doing at the regional level? The way ASEAN is trying to establish ASEAN political community, ASEAN economic community, ASEAN socio-cultural community. These will inform our decision-making process of how we address our strategic considerations. That's why we see we are sending Brigadier General to 3 ASEAN countries, because we put so much emphasis on our neighbors, we put so much emphasis on regional dynamic, what's happening within our nearest surroundings. The level of our defense attaches in 3 of ASEAN countries symbolizes what we think is important in our defense cooperation. These factors interact with Malaysia's state identity in complex ways. For example, our emphasis on sovereignty and independence limit our willingness to engage in security partnerships that are seen as compromising our autonomy. If we think the way we engage with certain countries will compromise our autonomy in economic decision making, who can we do business with, who can we do trade with, who can we sign free trade agreement with. This is all play a factor. And at the same time, strategic interest and regional dynamics may lead Malaysia to seek closer defense ties with certain countries, even if those countries do not share its state identity, even if the countries are not democratic, just like we do, probably a bit closer economics. But because of the strategic interest, we still have defense ties with them. Uh, that brings me to conclude that in all, overall, how we understand Malaysia's defense diplomacy, understanding how these various factors interact with Malaysia's state identity is crucial for understanding of Malaysia's defense relations with other countries. We must consider the political, social, and economic identity and the other factors. Now, let's see. Based on what I have identified as the components of Malaysian identity, this is what this is the case that I'm making. Why are we sending a major general to the United Kingdoms? Because it is influenced by our historic ties, our whole identity, not only political, economic, social identity, but also our domestic politics. That's why we are sending the highest rank of defense attaché. We consider UK as the most important defense partner. And the US and China, for example, I argue that we are sending the same rank of defense attaché to these two countries because of our political and economic identity, and also because of our strategic interest. And the three ASEAN countries, Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam, it is because of our economic identity and social identity, and also because of the regional dynamics. And when it comes to the 17 countries where we send colonel as our defense attaches, Russia, for example, we are only sending a colonel to Russia because of our political identity. We do not want to offend the United States. Alas, they say, brother, don't get too close to my enemy. Don't get too close to my enemy. That's what our considerations are. And for example, our partners in FPDA, Australia, New Zealand, and Singapore, we consider them as important, but because we are already sending the highest level of defense attaché to the United Kingdoms, it is not so pressing for us to send the highest level of defense attaché to Australia, New Zealand, and Singapore. We consider them as important, but because of the limitation of our resources, allocation of our resources, we consider that it is sufficient. We trust them enough. We do not have to send a high rank of military officer as our defense attaché. We trust them enough because of our historic ties and our political identity. We share the same political identity. All of us are democratic countries, for example. Japan and South Korea, this is mainly because of our economic identity. We want to attract foreign investment from these countries. France and Italy, political and economic identity. Political because we share the same political system. Economy because when it comes to defense, we want to attract military technology from these countries. As we can see, France is ranked 7 in world military rank. And let's see, where is Italy? Italy is ranked 12. So we want to obtain military technology from these two countries. That's why we are sending our defense attaches to these countries. And the other ASEAN countries, it's because of our social identity. Social identity as neighbors within the same grouping. We are in the same ASEAN family, and regional dynamics play an important role in influencing our decision to send only this level of defense attaché. And then, when it comes to Pakistan, the United States, Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia, it is influenced by our social identity. Muslim majority countries, we are sending our students to study there. We are sending our pilgrimage in Saudi Arabia, and our domestic politics Um, we put a lot of emphasis on Islamic values in Malaysia. So these influences our approach when it comes to what rank of defense attaché are we sending to these countries. Now, in conclusion, um, I argue that it is important to understand state identity and how it shapes defense relations, uh, and the relevance of the case study of Malaysia for broader debates in international relations. The unique historical, political, economic, and social factors that shapes Malaysia's identity have a significant impact on its defense relations with other countries. And although I argue that state identity um, can be a determining factor when it comes to sending what level of military rank as defense attaché, I concede that other factors are also important in analyzing defense relations between countries. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the feedback from the audience.
Yes, thank you very much, Clevin. And it's very interesting things that we can see how the state identities its form, and then it stipulate the defense identities, and it stipulate the defense relations with different countries. It's very interesting. You build arguments, the foundations from constructivisms, and then liberalisms, and try to say that it's just not realism, and so on, and then go on to different factors to build these things. It's very, very interesting. Now, I would like to open the floor for anyone who would like to give a feedback or some suggestions or any comments for him, please.
Please.
Okay, can I?
Yes, Mikio-san.
Okay, Carlervin, how? Hi, how are you today? Good.
I am good. I'm doing good. As you can see, I have settled down.
Good. Okay. Anyway, thank you very much for your very inspiring and comprehensive presentation on your research. So currently so this research not registered not registered yet, right? But it's a pity, and maybe you need to register this project, as a PhD.
Yes.
And maybe,
I'm-
yeah.
Yes.
Actually, this is academically very how they say, academically very academically informed research, definitely, because also you are dealing with a big subject, right? And try to understand the Malaysia's defense relations from the standpoint of constructivism. Yeah? So it looks like from your presentation, you have been quite successful, I think, so that you can explain the defense relationship, yeah? And from the standpoint of the constructivism, and it is about Malaysia's national identity. So the defense diplomacy is a kind of instrument to express Malaysia's national identity. Yeah?
Yes.
That was quite good as it is. Yeah. And hopefully you can pursue on this one, on this line of research. And on the other hand, and basically, me and Ni-chan and other people, and wants to know more about defense diplomacy activity itself. And so you already look at how many 23 countries received Malaysia's military attaché, right? And then you say, I'm quite curious. So what are those military attachés are doing in each country? Yeah, so we are very much interested. Yeah? So yeah. So of course, and each military attaché, and they are already there, right? And then they are engaged in daily activities, yeah? in
Yes. Mhm.
23 countries. Yeah. So
Mhm.
from our standpoint, and each of these countries can make one case study. You know,
Yes, indeed. Then
yeah, yeah. There
and
just be 23 case study, maybe 23 possible papers in the future. You know, something like that. And this is very great, because still we don't know, and also we need to understand that what is possible about defense diplomacy, because defense
mhm.
diplomacy is not the traditional idea of the military institution. Yeah? Basically, and the basic idea of the military institution is the preparation for war.
Yes.
But now it's so different, and yeah, and
Mhm.
what is happening now? Then
Mhm.
if it's not the preparation for war, then what are they doing actually? So this is our primary interest, and yeah,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
in this group, so you are the huge resource person actually. So you have been looking at all these things. Yeah. So anyway, but okay. Yeah. Anyway, okay. And in the list, I'm just curious. If I'm not mistaken, Germany is not listed, right? Germany.
Yes. Yes.
And maybe
This
you
is
know the reason
2020
why.
data. Yeah.
Germany, actually Germany, Malaysia doesn't send any high-ranking military attaché to Germany. Yeah? So because Germany doesn't have any role in terms of military relationship of military. Are there any I don't know how about weapons purchase from Germany? Let me see. Yeah. Submarine is from French, yeah? Submarine purchase. Scorpion or
Yes.
something.
Yes.
That is
The
the French,
submarine is from France,
France. But
and our some of our air force equipments are from Italy, from Russia, from the United States. Um, Germany, interestingly,
uh,
is one of the major source of our chemical imports.
yeah, actually.
Yes.
Uh,
So Germany is actually a huge contributor in our manufacturing industry
mm,
because, for example, the toiletries or when we manufacture
mm,
toiletries products,
oh,
soaps, shampoos, and cosmetics, we import some of the chemicals necessary for the
uh,
manufacturing of those chemicals from Germany, and
uh,
also
uh-huh.
heavy machineries for constructions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, all these things, yeah, but not about military equipment or weapons, because these days, in the current Ukraine conflict, yeah, and Germany, now that
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of the debate about whether Germany should send its tank. Yeah? Tank is very good. Something like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
leopard tank or something. Tank, yeah,
Yes.
to Ukraine. And so it seems that at least Germany look like producing this tank. Yeah? But Malaysia doesn't import anything like that. Yeah? A tank.
Now I should know better, but I have not looked at Germany.
Okay.
I should be looking more at Germany after this. Thanks
But it's
for pointing
okay.
that out. Yeah.
But the fact is that yeah, and Malaysia doesn't send the military attaché to Germany. Yeah? Anyway, yeah. So this is a fact, right?
Yes, according to
So
the
in total, there are 23
yes.
countries, and
Mm.
that receive military attaché. But anyway, that's
And
interesting.
this data is from August 2020. Yeah.
Uh,
There may have been
uh,
changes. I
uh,
believe I'm sure there may have been changes, but
okay.
I will have to re-examine what is the current data. The data that I'm presenting here is from August 2020.
August 2020. Then
Yes, August 2020.
that since the start of the Ukraine crisis, Ukraine conflict, huge changes now undergoing. Actually,
Yes,
huge change.
yes,
These are tectonic change. Tectonic.
yes,
You know this one, huh? And
yes.
And I don't know the perception on you. So the China, Russia kind of coalition. And then the China and Russia are getting closer with each other. Then this one may possibly maybe change, yeah? And in Malaysia, defense relations, yeah, with these two countries, right? And also you say, and Malaysia join those Western countries, right? And in response to China's military expansion, right? And especially in South China Sea or whatever. But the situation may change, yeah, because as my understand, I think some Southeast Asian countries feel a bit uneasy with the U.S. intervention, right, in South China Sea issue,
Yes,
right? And
indeed, because it is considered as what's the most precise term? Provoking, antagonizing, probably instigating.
Because US is far away from Southeast Asia, but because of the freedom of navigation,
yes,
and they are intervening. So I think some ASEAN countries maybe increasing feel uneasy because as I understand, also Southeast Asian countries are kind of something somehow coming terms with China. Yeah? China is considered maybe the part of the extended family. ASEAN is already family, one family. Then maybe the China may be considered as the extended family because of the huge benefit. Yeah? Then from this standpoint, the U.S. intervention a bit uneasy, right? And maybe this might be my personal perception. Something like that. And also the result of the Ukraine conflict, yeah? And this conflict is increasingly perceived as a proxy war.
Yes,
Russia and the Western countries, and then the result. Now the result that what is happening in Ukraine is increasingly known outside of the Europe and even here. Then depending on the changing perception, I think that this one strongly influence the defense relationship with those major countries and all these things. So this is also interesting point. But anyway, I think you are the very important resource partner, as I said earlier. So I'd like you to work with us. Thank you very much.
You are too kind. You are too kind. But just to respond to your inquiry about what are the defense attaches doing, what are the Malaysian defense attaches doing in all these countries? In this context, the role of our defense attaches in the 23 countries that I have presented, some of the role is to represent Malaysia's state identity and interests abroad by building relationships with other countries' military institutions and promoting cooperation. They negotiate with their counterparts to explore area of cooperation such as defense technology, training, and possibly joint exercises. And when it comes to the rank of our defense attaché, it reflects the symbolic and normative significance of the relationship between Malaysia and the individual countries. For example, the United Kingdom, it reflects the normative significance of our relationship because of our long history with the United Kingdom. Yes.
So the existence of Major General, right? Major General in the UK, right? That has a symbolic meaning, yeah? And so I think Major General, right? And
yes. It shows to the it shows to the other defense counterparts when they look at this, it directly tells them that we consider UK as the most important defense partner for us. Yeah, and UK is not even the strongest military power.
Not strong, and it has only maybe two nuclear submarine or something.
Yeah, as you can see from the slide that I'm still sharing right now, UK is only ranked number 8 in
Number
world military rank in
Yeah, yeah,
2022.
yeah.
So it is only ranked 8, but for us, they are our most important defense partner.
partner, yes. And
Why not US? Why not China? Why not Russia? I argue because of our identity and long historical ties.
and
Yeah, so
especially the emergency periods, right? And those things. And
yes,
only, but
yes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. That's all from me.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mikio. Yeah.
Thank you.
How about others? Are there any more comments?
Yes, I do have some questions.
Yes, please.
I'm sorry, I have to turn off my camera because I'm about to start driving. But my questions is, what I would like to see actually at first when I saw an advertisement, I thought we are going. I wanted to listen to the negotiation or the interpretation or how domestic actors in Malaysia negotiate or interpret the culture that you try to argue that the culture shape its foreign policy or its military strength. So I would like to see first what kind of culture or history, what kind of elements or aspect or unique characteristic of Malaysian legacy or culture that actually really shape its defense policy. So the first one is the main characteristic. The second thing is, how do you see or how would you define or what have you learned from the negotiation in maybe in the parliamentary system, or what were the debates amongst all the actors in the region or in Malaysia that shape its foreign policy? So there are two questions. Thank you.
All right. I have also considered this question, and so far, what I have found out, in order for us to understand Malaysia's culture and how it shapes our defense relations, defense priorities, I think a good starting point would be to look at the civilian military relations in Malaysia. Because in Malaysia, the military is put under the civilian elected parliamentarians are the one who is making decisions for the military. Where can they participate? The level of participation, and then usually when it comes to our participation in whatever initiative that we are having at the international level, according to the study by Asri Saleh in his study of Malaysian participation in peacekeeping activities, there are two dynamics. First, it is debated debated in the parliament whether or not we can send our peacekeeping team to certain countries, but also there are also instances where the prime minister himself will take the prerogative of deciding where should we participate or where should we send our peacekeeping operations. So so far, that is what I have observed. First, the importance of the civil military relations, whereby the military is subjected to civilian rules, and the decisions of how the military should be used is subjected to civilians' decisions. That's one part. And when it comes to our activities abroad, it is debated in the parliament. The process of debating involves the size, the budget, I think. And then in other instances, the prime minister himself will make his decision. I think this has been convincingly demonstrated by Dr. Asri Saleh in his PhD studies. Yeah, so I hope that somewhat addresses your inquiry, Prof. Narut.
Yes, from Dr. Narut Jerensi from Chiang Mai University. Okay. So I have two questions. I mean, a very just my own curiosities. My first questions is I remember I have no specific knowledge based on defense diplomacies and the 16 forms that you mentioned in the beginning of your slides, that you selected one form of this kind of 16 form of defense cooperations to define the defense relations, and you decided to pick up to send the defense attaches as the way to define, right? My first question is that why do you choose this kind of forms to define the state relations in terms of defense?
Okay. I actually conveniently decided to select defense attaché as a unit of as the unit of the realm of analysis because of the unique characteristic of our practice in sending defense attaches. For example, when I started compiling all this data in 2020, for example, I noticed the patterns. And this really struck me as an intriguing topic to study. Just the characteristic or the way we differentiated our formal defense relations, because the practice of sending defense attaches in foreign missions, it signifies that we have a formal defense relations with our counterpart, and then the rank informs us about the significance or the level of importance in the way we perceive our counterpart. That's the first part, and I hope somewhat addresses your inquiry. That's what makes it interesting. Just the level of differentiated defense attaches in these countries, because I would like to know why. Why is it different? Who decides what rank of defense attaches goes where? This is one of the questions that I'm trying to investigate, that I'm trying to answer. But I'm still studying this topic. I'm still studying it.
Yeah, thank you very much. And in this case, it leads to my second questions. How can I start it? When you build the argument from the constructivisms and you point out how the state shaped by that things and also defense diplomacies, and then later on based on the liberalisms that might focus on interest, and I think he has already touched this upon already, that how the military attaches are sending, of course, might based on the category format that you designs the recently that you just show. Of course, when the colonizations founding countries, of course, you send the high-ranking military position there. But of course, in terms of interest, in terms of economic identities, economic relations, that also sending someone to that to military ranking based on economic relation as well. But also interestingly, one thing that I think is very, very important as well, especially based on the what's so called the security operations. Security operations also like in the Malacca Straits, or the maritimes, securities, or the linking collaboration of ASEAN military cooperations, I think the ranking in this case might be also important to consider, that not just only in terms of economics, or in terms of the colonizations, founding countries and relations with Malaysia. I'm not just talking about Malaysia itself. I'm talking about other country as well in Southeast Asia. All right. So in this case, military operation and collaboration might be one important factor, that they know each other. These are military personnel, right? And they have to send someone in the same rank or someone that they know to work on that operations. That's my observation, that I feel that especially in the era of the non-traditional securities, of the pirates, or the let's say about the border issues, Thailand, Cambodia's, or human traffickings, online casinos, or of this stuff, that need border securities and need militaries to be there. This also seems to be another important issue that I just want to ask from everyone as well to give comments, and also yourself. Thank you.
All right. Now that you mentioned it, it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me because in order to perform military operation and collaboration, you have to have somebody who can make decision. A lower military rank may not be the most suitable person to call the shots, to make decisions. So now that you mention it, it occurs to me. Yeah, and I think that's a very, very important and constructive observation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Are there any people would like to give a suggestion or comments, or to build this, as this is a new interesting area that I think we can develop as a new research together with everybody here today? I think it's very interesting that we have a lot of interesting organization, institutions, and people and different fields. Mikio, would you like to do something to give more feedback or anything? Or Ajahn Nurut or Sakuria, Dr. Agus as well is here from Gajah Mada University. Anyone would like to share?
Can I ask a few questions and say something? I'm sorry, my camera is not working. Only my mic is working, so I can only ask through audio sharing. There is no video sharing on my part. So my name is Muhammad Hashim. I'm currently doing PhD in UMS under the Faculty of Social Science. So
Okay.
firstly, I'm doing my research in humanitarian diplomacy, Malaysia's humanitarian diplomacy. But I can see there are possibly large area of overlap between diplomacy, defense, and also humanitarian diplomacy, because if you read the articles or literature last year, there were huge movement of humanitarian assistance from Malaysia to Afghanistan, which was assisted by both the military and NGOs. So my first question is, what is your take about this overlap? The overlap between humanitarian assistance, disaster recovery, post-conflict development, vis-a-vis this humanitarian diplomacy activity. Secondly, the data that you shared, the ranks and the locations of defense attaché, did you corroborate or verify with Wisma Putra or MINDEF, or did you just rely on literature to support this your data and your findings?
Okay, to address the second question first, the data that I shared is actually taken from the official website of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Wisma Putra. So it is from the Wisma Putra website. But it is, I should say, it is quite outdated already. It's in 2020. probably there are some changes that I have not been following. So that's the first, yeah, the source of my data. It is from the official website of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And the first question, the overlap between defense diplomacy and humanitarian diplomacy. The way I see it, my take is that we are sending someone to help in a situation of conflict where some people are affected. Some people are affected, and whatever activities that we need to conduct in the area that requires humanitarian assistance, it will require coordination by trained personnel who are familiar with the way commands are being instructed. So, if we are working in a conflict situation or probably a conflict situation is not the most accurate term to use because we are sending humanitarian assistance. But
natural disasters like tsunami and earthquake and the typhoon, right? Maybe.
yes, but I would assume my take is that when we work in these localities, when we work in this situation, in these places, it is not a honeymoon operation. So we need to send the fittest person here who can work in a stressful condition with destruction all over the place. People are in need of medical attention, probably distributing food, providing shelters. This should be conducted by the military because they are very fit and they are conditioned to be able to operate in these situations. That's why we are sending the military. And this is the overlap that I see. Doing humanitarian work can be done by civilian, but if you are not trained to work in stressful condition, stressful situation, the operation may not be as effective as an operation that is being carried out by highly trained professionals. That's my take.
Okay. That's one thing. For Mr. Carlervin. You're talking about chain of command, the official chain of command. What about using humanitarian diplomacy as a preemptive defense strategy? Meaning to say you build friendship and attraction first rather than uh, we build friendship and attraction first to avoid any possible confrontation in the future.
Yes, actually, that is one of the purpose of defense diplomacy to build trust using your military not for aggressive actions but peaceful operations. That is highly relevant, and I would agree with you that using military is very important to signal to the other counterpart that look, we come with good intentions. We want to show that you can trust us. So we are going to send our military not to interfere in your domestic situation, but we are here to help because we want to show that we are committed to peaceful relationship. So that's how I look at the situation that you have presented. That's my take. I hope it addresses your inquiry adequately.
So basically, under the defense attaché, there should be a mixed composition of civilian and military people working on the ground to carry out both defense and humanitarian or even civilian diplomacy. Is it?
Well, our diplomatic practice, the way I understand it, is that if it is a defense attaché, it must be represented by somebody from our defense apparatus. regardless of whether it is the armed forces or whether it comes that official, that personnel comes from the Navy or probably from the Air Force. But then again, using civilian in diplomacy, probably I would say it is workable, but using a different track, because we have multiple tracks of diplomacy. For example, we ourselves, educators, we can still work to contribute in humanitarian diplomacy, but probably in a different capacity than what is being expected from the military personnel. So both the military personnel and the civilian personnel, whatever that may be, doctors, educators, activists, both categories can work in humanitarian diplomacy, but probably with different sets of expectations when it comes to the role that we are asked to perform on the ground.
Okay, okay. So I think you have enlightened most of the light to my question. It's very interesting to note that there is a lot of overlapping and interconnection. People tend to view uh, military activism abroad as some sort of affair that is detached from the civilian life and civilian concern. But as we note from our sharing just now that uh, there is actually a lot of to be concerned about among the regular citizens when it comes to putting our defense people abroad and representing our
Yes.
country. So with that take, I return the floor back to the moderator for anyone else to continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Hashim.
Yeah, yeah. Welcome.
Yes, thank you so much. I think we still have time for about 20 minutes. 20 minutes. If anyone would like to share and discuss, it would be interesting. But by the way, I still have one questions that I would like to know based
Please.
on the 16 forms, the 16 forms of operations, and you decided to pick up this one. And I think this could draw to something interesting of this 16 form of how we can categorize the missions and the actions of the military relations and action and collaborations in terms of handling, non-traditional securities. How can we define? And as Hasim mentions about how to prevent, the future crash or problems or anything in the future with using this defense diplomacy. Could be interesting to form this kind of conceptual framework, pre, during the time it happens, and post. I think it would be very interesting, this 16 form. If you could explain to us a little bit about this kind of 16 form of defense diplomacy formats.
Let me just share the defense diplomacy activities according to Coty and Foster. Actually, it's just 10 apparently. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 9. 9. Yeah. And I conveniently decided to study on the number 2, appointment of defense attaches to foreign countries. So here, as we can see, each of these topics can be a research for, can be an topic for research. For example, bilateral and multilateral context, I have identified 23 countries where Malaysia is sending defense attaches. In fact, I would like to suggest in my recommendation that we look at each of the 23, just like what Mikio-san has suggested. Each of the 23 countries could be an interesting case study in and of itself. And then looking at number 3, bilateral defense cooperation agreements. How did it come to be? What are the background? When do states decided to establish bilateral defense cooperation? What are the background of the bilateral defense cooperation agreements, what makes them decided to have a bilateral defense cooperation agreements. For example, if two countries only decided to establish bilateral defense cooperation agreements, let's say in 2023, we can investigate why only 2023, then you started the cooperation. Before that, what happens? What prompted both parties to start bilateral defense cooperation agreements? And looking at number 2, training of foreign military and civilian defense personnel itself is an interesting topic to study because if we look at training of foreign military, who do we allow to come to train, to receive training? What are the ranks involved and what are the arrangements? Is it through formal arrangements or is it through an informal arrangement, and what are the levels, the duration of training, and so forth? So that can also be an interesting topic to study. And number 5, provision of expertise and advice on democratic control. What channel is it? Is it through military and military, or is it initiated through the traditional diplomacy, but then again handed over to the defense diplomacy personnel when it comes to giving advice? Contacts and exchanges between military personnel and units, and ship visits, how frequent, how many personnel are involved, what is the motivation, for example. And looking at all this, I would say each of these can be studied in and of itself. Just like what I have done with the second activity, defense appointment of defense attaches to foreign countries. But if I can hear again from you, probably what would you suggest? What would be your suggestion of the things that we can study here?
In my point of view, this defense diplomacy activities can be framed as a new concept, in handling security issues in Southeast Asia. That's what I see here. And we don't have to rely on exactly the same words, as in table 1 like this, but we capture the essence and elements of these all 9 forms of activities, and then we shape it as 3 or 4.
Yes.
Re-understanding, revisiting this new concept again, and then form it up as the way or standpoint to handle various kind of securities and problems or crises or violence or activities, both security, non-traditional security and traditional securities in the lower ASEANs and the upper ASEANs. And this could frame a very interesting how each military in each country handling, all these things, and it also include the appointment of defense attaches, to foreign countries, or to handle as a pack of corporations. I think this could be a good standpoint when we're starting a research, something like this.
I would agree, but I should say that I need to learn more from you. I'm still lacking in knowledge. I need to study more from the more established experts, just like yourself and Mikio-san, and from the others.
Not me, Mikio. Mikio. Everything is based on Mikio, and Dr. Agus is here as well. Maybe he can help.
Actually, there's not much. I think. How do you say? Maybe still this topic is relatively new. I think relatively. Although there are several already PhD theses or other things, but still, when I just read the articles, relevant articles, then I had the impression this area is still unexplored mostly, not explored enough. And also through our group research, definitely we can find and maybe different categories of defense activities not listed there, definitely. Because that one still it's rather narrow in its scope, yeah, and more specific. Yeah. Because what I'm thinking is that basically, as Nichan said, this is a kind of the security, yeah, and security issue. So of course you know the word collective security, or collective security. United Nations is a collective security organization, United Nations, right? Then under collective security, this concept, and there are a lot of things can be included, yeah, and collective security. And as Nichan said, traditional security and non-traditional security, and also collective security also include conflict management, definitely conflict management, because this is under collective security, and there's a huge potential, and also we can have a lot of we can find a lot of cases of collective security activity, or this traditional, non-traditional, and conflict management things, and border management, and all things. And these are all considered under collective security. And yeah, definitely the ASEAN provide a huge source of case studies, definitely. And the ASEAN itself is the one family, right? One family. All countries are family members, family members. So that, and there's no enemy, within this ASEAN. Then definitely the military institutions should be behaving themselves accordingly, reflecting this big concept of family. Then this is a collective security. But on the other hand, also there's the element of collective defense, collective defense. And as Carlervin mentioned, so there is a five power defense agreement. So this one can be considered, right? Kind of collective defense organization. This one, so the UK, Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, right? All this, right? UK,
Yes.
Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand. And the five
Yes.
power defense agreement. And this one has a historical thing. Maybe, how they say, because collective defense usually needs a common enemy, usually.
Yes.
Common.
Yes.
But in this five power defense agreement, not specific common enemy, and maybe potential enemy could be maybe China, and maybe in collaboration with the United States. But this is not so straightforward, right? And this five power defense agreement kind of works as a part of the, how do you say, maybe nation building and the state formation of Singapore and Malaysia. Yeah? Maybe this one is more about, I think, helping the two countries, Singapore and Malaysia, to establish at the nation state, I think. Then coping with the threat from inside and outside, rather than imagining certain enemies. But anyway, so when I'm listening to your presentation, so this element also Malaysia also had, yeah, because this is anyway collective defense. That one can be theoretically differentiated from collective security. And as Carlervin say, if Malaysia too much approach to China, then Malaysia needs to be concerned with the response from the US. Yeah. These are also quite interesting, actually, yeah, and
Yes.
other phenomena. So what Malaysia is doing under the category of defense diplomacy, very, very complicated, in a sense. That are the element of collective defense and the collective security, and then how these things are interacting. But anyway, within the framework of collective security, basically, and the military institutions are working together to basically enhance the confidence, right? And also something similar within the framework of collective defense, both. But somehow, so that we can also categorize and defense diplomacy under collective defense framework. Then another framework, collective security framework. Both is. And then the Southeast Asia provide a big source of cases. I think this is a huge potential. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Are there any other comments and questions? And of course, I think we can work together as a research team and cluster to develop this field together based on, Kevin's backgrounds and first initial project of his research.
Well, I look forward to be able to contribute meaningfully to the network, and I look forward also to learning more from the other scholars doing research in defense diplomacy. And I should thank the organizer for this opportunity to share my research. I want to thank Mikio-san for continuously pursuing me, pursuing and persuading me to share my research, because without his relentless pursuit, I would not have the courage and confidence to take this floor and share my research to the members. So thank you very much for having me.
Yes, and thank you, my friend, as well, people as well, to join, and also other people, and Dr. Agus as well. We will discuss this with you again later, and Sakiri as well, and Hasim as well for being here. And we look forward to have this kind of cooperations again, and stay tuned for a new project, research together for the Southeast Asia in order to transform Southeast Asia. So thank you very much, and we see you again next time. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mikio, maybe you stay a little bit longer. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see. Yes.
And as well as okay, thank you.
So I will excuse myself, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Yeah. We will keep in touch.